Hi, everyone. I am delighted today to have Dr. Erica Jordan with me to talk a little bit about preparing for life after college. Dr. Jordan is a clinical assistant professor of human development at the University of Houston. And this is actually the second part in our two-part series about preparing for life after college. We did an initial hangout last spring where Dr. Jordan talked a little bit about what you could do in the spring semester to prepare at various levels of your college career. And we wanted to come back again this fall and talk a little bit about the fall semester and get a sense for what it is that students can do at each level, at each stage of the process to really begin preparing for graduate school or for other careers. So thank you, Erica, for being here today. And yeah, I'd love to just have you chime in and say a little more about yourself if you'd like, and then jump into some of the conversation about what should students be thinking about this fall.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Langworthy, for that very warm welcome. I'm glad. Thanks so much for having me again to your show again, your YouTube channel show. And so my background is in psychology and human development and family studies, but one of my strong areas of passion is career development for undergraduates. So I am highly engaged in undergraduate education. I love teaching my undergraduates at the University of Houston. I teach a few hundred every semester in various different courses. And on the side, I also have that HDFS careers blog, just because I love helping students along their professional journey. It was a very sort of interesting journey for me to get where I am today. Sometimes I felt really lost. Sometimes I felt really confident. Sometimes I was able to get really cool experiences. So it just, all that goes into that is part of the process. And I like helping undergraduates to navigate that situation. Awesome. So I will, Dr. Langworthy came up with a fabulous structure during our spring edition so that we break down some of the tips by a year of progression as you go through college. And I think that that's a great way to break it down. So I'm going to do it again during our fall edition of this as well. So I'll just get going with freshman year. So, and we also will talk about tips for both people who know they want to go to graduate school and also people who want to go directly into the workforce. Freshman year, both people, everybody, should be sure that they are visiting with their advisor. So maybe perhaps you visited with the advisor at the beginning of the freshman year. I sure hope so. But if not, or even if you have already visited with them once, you want to be following back up around this time because you're probably registering for spring classes. I know at various institutions, it could sometimes be difficult to get in to see your advisor. Sometimes they're super busy. There are a lot of students that they're trying to serve, but be that persistent student, keep contacting, plan ahead so that you can get an advising appointment and sit down and try and get some guidance. And this goes for whether you're a major or you've declared a major, or even if you haven't declared a major, you want to talk with some advisor, even if it's just a general advisor, just to be sure that you're on track in terms of your future plans for graduation and in terms of some of the topics that you think you might be interested in. If you still need to declare a major, they can help you with provide some guidance based on the majors that are available at your specific university. Also, for both groups, during this freshman year, you want to continue the exploration process. So maybe you love your major. Maybe you picked a major early on, you've taken the classes during this first fall semester, and you love it, and that is fabulous, great. But there are a lot of people who do not love it. maybe you chose a major for a whole host of reasons. Maybe you had an idea about the profession and you just sort of idealized the profession. You didn't really know all that went into it. Maybe certain people were pressuring you into one specific type of major. I'm going to really encourage you to begin to do some self-reflection at this point and be sure that you are really committed to sticking with your major if you have chosen a major. At least do yourself a favor, and if you feel as though you're on the fence, at least explore some of the options. I would at the very least look through your course catalog at your various universities. determine what other majors exist, maybe visit the career services on campus. Most campuses do have a robust career service offering. So sort of explore, do yourself the favor now to explore the possibilities. And then you can make an informed judgment about, I definitely still want to stay in this major, or okay, I at least want to maybe try and take a course and explore this alternative potential major. It's not saying that you have to go out and change your major right away, but at least do yourself the favor and start the exploration process just in case. Also,
I was going to say, during freshman year, do you find that students are a little bit just still kind of getting used to the swing of college and aren't really thinking necessarily about the career process and what's next? You know, they're just kind of still getting their feet wet and getting excited about the college experience. Are there sort of some low stakes ways for people to begin doing that exploration that maybe feel a little less intense or a little less like I'm committing to my life moving forward?
Well, and I'm glad you bring up that point, because one thing I will say is if you look at the statistics on people who are working outside of their major, I don't ever want people to feel like they're placed in a box at any stage in their life, just because that just doesn't seem to be the reality of the way the world works. I mean, people, you know, they reinvent themselves over and over again. But to your point about low stakes strategies, one thing is just take a look at the different majors that are available at the university. That's something that I remember doing in my freshman year. I was one of those, I kind of want to major in everything, you know, so interesting to me. I would have like 14 majors if I could have stayed in school that long. So maybe just looking at the available options, maybe talking to some other students if you happen to know any other students who are involved in that major, maybe setting up an appointment with their advisor, an advisor in that major, just to get a feel for, okay, what are these types of courses? And then we are in the age of the World Wide Web. You can always explore different career options from the comfort of your own home in a very low stakes way. You can sort of see, you can use LinkedIn to see, you know, what are people actually doing who've had that major? So where are they working today? And so there's some definitely some low stakes ways, and I think that's a great strategy. And then, you know, some people might feel more comfortable. I was one of those students, I was always at career services, and you know, they do have a very specific set of strategies for freshmen, and so don't be afraid to go to career services just because you're a freshman. I would also say, as another very important tip for both groups, especially for those who think that they might want to go to graduate school in the future, but really for both groups, is you want to begin to build good study habits, and you want to do well in your classes. Make going to class a priority. That is your number one priority as a freshman, is to go to class. You never know what that faculty member is going to do in class or say in class that might show up on an exam later. You never know when they're going to throw out a pop quiz or a pop extra credit assignment. You just never know. So you need to be there in class. First of all, when you're hearing the information from the faculty members, particularly if you're truly paying attention. So if you're truly paying attention, not off on your phone, you know, if you're truly paying attention, making eye contact with a faculty member is a good tip that I heard from one of my former students. That it's going to make more sense, the material, just because you're paying attention. And then you can take notes that'll help jog your memory later on. But just that simple act of being there can really help if you're truly focused. You want to try and develop that practice even for classes that naturally come easy to you. Like, I've definitely talked to some freshmen that are like, oh, the classes are easy. Well, they're not going to stay that way, all of them. So start to build these study habits now while it's lower stakes for you. Start to get into the practice of going to class. So
the other thing I'll say about the professor angle of that is that you don't know if this professor is going to turn out to be really, really important for your career in college in some way or another. So you don't know if the person who's your professor for that freshman seminar, it ends up you are in that major and then you need to do research credits with them or something down the road. And so building those relationships and starting to build those relationships and at least build positive goodwill with your professors that you have during that freshman year can really pay off in the long run.
Definitely. One of the things that I try to communicate, it's harder for me to communicate it to my students who are currently enrolled in my classes, because I certainly don't want them to think I'm singling anybody out. But For my students who come to me for mentoring, or they come to me for like career advice, career guidance, graduate school guidance, one of the things I tell them, get to know your professors and make a positive impression. Make an impression for the right reasons. You know, we all know those students who, they look like, you know, it's just paining them to be in the class. Like we remember you, even in a class, even in a very large classroom, like we see you, you know, if it's just like, this is the worst thing for you every single day, is to be there in that classroom. You know, you're persistently not paying attention. You're shopping for, you know, you're shopping for home decor while you're supposed to be during lecture. You know, you see it. And and then some of us, I know I keep an attendance record. If somebody wants to do something with me later on, or if they want a letter of recommendation, I have hundreds of students. What's the first thing I'm doing? I'm going straight back, you know, look at how they performed in my class. And part of that is active engagement and participation. I'm trying to jog my memory. So you just never know who you might need later on. There's that old saying goes, don't burn bridges. So try to develop positive bridges, build positive bridges with the faculty members that you have. And even with the teaching assistants, you know, don't just think you can be disrespectful to them either. As a teaching assistant, I've had to write letters of recommendation, but then they also have a direct line to the faculty in that department. So, so definitely, also a good important note to start attending class, building or continue attending class, and then building good study habits is you want to be able to have some sort of buffer. So as I mentioned, some of my students, they find the classes to be very easy early on in their freshman year. And that's great for them, because as long as they do what they say, do what they're supposed to do, as long as they're not slacking off just because, you know, they feel like they've got this, but as long as they're really actually doing the work on time, still attending class, this is great. This gives them a buffer, because later on those classes might get harder. And, you know, now they have something to help balance their GPA out. On contrast, a lot of students really struggle with transitioning from high school to college coursework. So those freshman classes are actually very difficult for them. And you want to be sure that you reach out to get the resources that you need. I always say, get what you are paying for, get what you or somebody else is paying for. So the universities, just about every college and university I know of, they have some sort of support services in the form of tutoring, some sort of resource center. Some will have a writing center. Some will have a complete tutoring center. You can find other students who seem to know the material well, ask them if they can help you. You want to reach out and play on the strengths of your network and utilize the resources available to you at a college or university to ensure that you're successful, because you want to start to build the tools for success during your freshman year. That helps set the stage for your future performance. So it can go either way. Also, become familiar with research opportunities for undergraduates on campus if you think that you might want to attend graduate school in the future. And most graduate programs nowadays, they do have some component to research, not all of them, but the vast majority of them do. So you start getting to know people, talking to your teaching assistants, talking to other undergraduates who might be engaged in research. If your university has any sort of undergraduate research conference, research day, research program, look these things up and ask your faculty members, what are the active labs in this department? Are there any labs that accept undergraduates? And you're not saying that you want to necessarily commit to a lab at this point, but just become familiar with the different options on campus. Use the internet. The internet is your friend. See what types of opportunities are available throughout campus, but then also talk to people. Related to that, talking to people, that'll be easy to do if you're going to programs that are hosted by the department, the college, the university. It's going to be a lot easier to get to know faculty members, graduate students, and other undergraduate students who might have information that you can use. Also, if you want to go to graduate school specifically, begin starting to keep a record of everything you do. This really goes for people who are going straight into career too, so I'll actually probably repeat this later. But start keeping a record. It can be as easy as a Google document that you download and email to yourself as a backup every now and then. But start keeping some running document of everything you're doing. With when you are submitting for different scholarship programs, or you're submitting your resume or your CV, sometimes you're tailoring that for different experiences, for different graduate programs, for different jobs. And so you want to keep a master list of everything that you've done, because something that doesn't seem very important for now, it might be that thing that connects you to a specific experience later. I know I've definitely had things that have fallen off of my resume, and then, you know, I pursue a different opportunity. I'm like, wait a second, let me put that back on, because actually this now relates again to this this new opportunity or this new job. So you just want to keep a record of everything, even if you're not sure if it'll be important. When in doubt, list it, because that doesn't mean that you have to put it on a specific resume. You just need to know that you had that experience. For people who want to go to the workforce directly, if you think you want to go directly into the workforce, you still want to be sure that you're meeting regularly with your advisor, being honest with yourself about your major. If you don't think it's for you, continue to explore options, focusing on your coursework, because then, again, you still want to buffer later on if you need it, when you get to some more difficult courses. And certainly if you're struggling, you still want to, again, reach out for help. Do it now, do it early, start to build those bridges for help later on. Then if you really strongly think that you want to go into workforce, one thing that can be really helpful to start to give you an edge is be involved on campus selectively. Okay, so you want to be smart about it. Don't go out and join like 10 organizations, because it's clear you can't be that involved in 10 organizations. This just looks like a random list on your resume. Mm-hmm. But go to, if there's any sort of organization fair, student organization fair that might be coming up, you can plan to attend that. If not, just look at the list of organizations on the website. If your university doesn't have them on the website, go to the student organization office or the office of the dean of students or whatever comparable office they have, and ask for a list of student organizations, and then sort of review, start to explore those organizations and think about which ones you might want to dip your toe into, and just sort of see what it's all about. Be careful.
It's also a great way to make friends and network too. I mean, we don't always think about that as networking, but honestly, a lot of the people that you would meet in those kinds of organizations, the ones who are older than you, they're going to go on to do cool stuff somewhere. And so the fact that you worked with them and know them from this organization can be really beneficial down the road.
Definitely. That's a great point, because even the ones who were in your own cohort, I had guest speakers in my class this semester. They were in the same cohort. I believe they were in the same cohort. They were in the same class. Well, one of them ended up going abroad for a while. The other one ended up sort of in a supervisory position at a different organization. You know, when the first one came back from abroad, you know, she was looking for work, and of course, who was in her network? Well, they had been involved on campus together in a professional organization on campus. And so it's a great way to network, to begin to get your feet wet. And thinking about that, though, just remember, these people will know everything about your behavior. So you don't have to show up in a business suit, but be aware of this. These are your colleagues, and so these are the people who will continue to know you potentially in the future. So just be aware and be mindful of your behavior as well, and be engaged and be actually involved. So that could be you don't want to overcommit, but beginning to get involved in a few organizations that you're genuinely interested in can be really helpful. And having just a few high impact experiences, that's actually worth a lot more than just having a bunch of random experiences that aren't really connected. I would actually encourage people in their freshman year, even if they don't have a major declared, if they know that they probably want to go directly into the workforce, I would definitely encourage you to visit the Career Center, because they're going to start exposing you to different career options within your field. Usually they have a database of alumni who are interested in graduates of your university, potentially interested in hiring them in the future. You can start to see what types of internships and volunteer experiences might be out in the immediate community. So they can just be an amazing resource. And then talk to people about their work. And this is one thing that has been kind of funny for me to learn about some of my students, despite the fact that we're in this age of social media, where you sort of feel like people are able to connect more. Some students are really afraid to put themselves out there and talk to people about their work they do. But that is that my number one tip? It might be my number one tip. It's tied with
Yeah.
experience. They are very closely tied. You have got to talk to people about what they do, because there are so many jobs that even me sitting here today, and I actually have a research project where I do nothing but read job announcements, but even me sitting here and being a person with that crazy research project, there are a lot of jobs that I am not aware of. We are not aware of them, and you're not going to be aware of them unless you ask people about what they do for a living. People kind of hear about doctor, lawyer, teacher, psychologist, engineer, but they don't hear beyond those big name careers. They don't hear about all this other, these myriad of careers that are out there that we're not going to know about unless you're talking to people. So this is especially true because different companies will use different names, different titles for similar jobs. So you've got to talk to people about their work. So be interested, be engaged in the world around you. Start doing that early because that's going to benefit you. Again, keep a record of everything you do and get to know your professors, because you're going to need references. And that looks good if you have a faculty member who's willing to say something positive about you. So go to their office hours. I had a student who, was asking me, I don't know what to say during office hours. If they said anything that was interesting to you in class, say, I really thought that was interesting. Man, that was a really an interesting topic that you talked about. That, people like to hear that. Or if you happen to be interested in their own professional path, you can ask them, just say, hey, I'm just interested in, so, what was your grad school experience like? So your background is in what? You can do a little bit of homework before you go. So you can just go to have general conversation. You can go to talk about the class. You can go to get clarification about something. Don't just come and ask them a bunch of things that are answered in your syllabus. Don't do that. That's going to be annoying.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Just don't.
Do a little bit don't do that. Do a little bit of homework. So, and then come up with some questions that are related to the material that they've not already answered, and begin to develop a rapport with them. And that's been one of the coolest things. There are some students who, they started coming to my office hours just to chat, and I've been able to build really fun relationships with them over the course of their professional development. And then again, still be aware of your behavior in class. Just be aware that it's a live person presenting. This could be a potential future reference for you. You never know. Even if you think they are teaching something that you're never going to use, you just never know. So just be aware of your behavior in class as well. Get to know your classmates, go to class, and just be a positive departmental and university citizen. Just get out there. So that's freshman year. Okay, moving on to sophomore year. So graduate school track, if you continue to be unsure about your major, now you've got to do some more deep soul searching at this point. If you still feel on the fence and you think you might be considering going to graduate school in this field, please give some thought, because graduate school in a major that you don't really like, in an area that you don't really like, basically feels like prison. Like it feels like your trap. So please be sure that you are wholeheartedly committed. Continue exploring throughout your sophomore year, because it becomes a little bit trickier to make changes after your sophomore year. So continue to take that time. Keep taking the classes if you still feel like you want to go that way, but really be honest with yourself and be sure that you're really committed to that major. Be sure that you're committed to writing it out. And that you've also explored alternatives. There might be similar majors out there that kind of take a different angle or a different direction. Be sure that those are not a better fit for you. If you are pretty confident, you like this area that you're in, definitely try and get involved in a research lab on campus if your area is in a field that involves research. Many graduate programs, they're looking for research experience even at the undergraduate level now. So begin to start to get your feet wet with that lab experience. You're gonna have to do some work and plan ahead. So this is why it's a good thing to be thinking about this during the fall of your sophomore year, so that maybe you can start to get engaged in the spring of your sophomore year or the fall of your junior year. And just be sure that you followed up on some of that earlier homework that you've done. Ask who's accepting new undergraduate research assistants. apply, put thought and time into your application. If they require a resume or something, put thought and time into that, have somebody proofread over it. It's just like you're applying for a job in some cases. So try to get that experience so that you can be sure that you like research. Now, other programs that maybe their graduate programs are not as focused on research, you want to be sure that you're getting some practical experience. Begin to start to get some practical experience that's related. So, if it's a program that would be a graduate program that you're looking for that be heavily focused on clinical skills. Maybe you could get some experience volunteering perhaps at the local crisis center or crisis hotline. Certainly if it's anything in the arts, they have usually very hands-on classes anyway. But if there are other ways for you to get experience that's kind of on the job training through volunteer experiences, get engaged. Also, remember that you've got to keep your grades up. If you're going to apply to graduate school, for most people, if they want to go right after they graduate, then they need to be applying during the fall of their senior year. So what really counts in terms of your grades is your sophomore and junior year. So continue to keep those grades up and reach out for resources again if you're struggling. Reach out for tutoring resources if they have them on campus, or reach out to other peers for tutoring if maybe your campus doesn't have tutoring in a specific area or course. Continue to meet with your advisor, and also in meeting with your advisor, think about the classes that you're taking. I will tell you, as somebody who has I've advised my own students informally as a faculty member, that then just being familiar with graduate admissions committees at previous institutions, they do look at the types of classes that you're taking. So if you're taking just a flat out easy course load, all easy classes, just the easiest classes that you can get, they're not challenging, that might not hold as much weight, even if you have a higher GPA, as someone, for instance, in the behavioral sciences who they've had statistics, they've had some of these other more research methods, they've had some of these more challenging courses as well. Not to say that the other courses aren't challenging, but certainly statistics and methodological courses and other types of coursework, they bring in a new skill set that undergraduates do not come to the institution with typically. And so graduate admissions committees are going to be looking for that skill set. They're going to be looking for evidence that you are going to be able to do that, because that's part of their upper level graduate training. So be mindful of the classes.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great suggestion. And I think a lot of the time for graduate level stuff, when people ask me, how do I prepare for graduate school? It's doing the good coursework that you can, but also thinking about how are you going to be best prepared, because they're looking for preparedness.
Oh, yeah.
Are you prepared for the grad school experience? And if you're willing to kind of go out on a limb and say, I'm going to take this statistics course, even though it might be kind of over my head, or I'm going to, take a risk here because I know that this experience will further me down the path and make me more prepared for a graduate school experience. Yeah, grad committees are going to look at that and say, okay, this person shows initiative. They're showing that they want to move down this path. Whereas if you play it a little too safe, they might say, well, are they really ready for the rigorous nature of what we want to do in our graduate program? So
definitely.
Thinking about preparing yourself as much as possible for that track by taking some risks and doing some harder stuff when the opportunity arises.
Definitely. Preparedness, that's the perfect word. That's definitely what they're looking for. And this is not to say that you have to take an upper level stats class
right.
in your sophomore year, but when you meet with your advisor, you might know that you're trying to structure your courses so that you are taking one by the end of your junior year. If you know that you're trying to get into a graduate program in psychology, for instance.
Right.
And so you want to be meeting with the advisor, because yes, that preparedness matters. That's exactly what they're looking for. There are a lot of people out there who might have the passion for it, but if they haven't had the preparedness to back it up, we don't know if you're going to get into the program and decide, oh gosh, like this, you didn't really know what you were getting into.
Right.
And we're looking for people who are going to be able to commit to the program and know what they're getting into because they are prepared. So that's a great point. Also, get to know people in your program, department, college by continuing to attend those events. Hopefully you've been attending events on campus anyway, but now you're, as you're getting more involved with your major, if you have settled on a major, then if they have a special speaker coming in we had one coming in from New York on a topic that's related to that field, go to that workshop. If they're meeting with students, go to that student meeting. And just get to know the people within the department, the college. You want to be viewed as a positive departmental citizen, because guess what? When we're sitting around, and sometimes we're doing this thinking of, oh, we need to send a student representative to this special committee, or we need to nominate a student for this particular honor. Oh, who do we have? So there's certain names that bubble up from multiple people, because these students have been around, they've been involved, they made a positive impression on multiple faculty members, and you want to try and be one of those people who the faculty members know. They know, oh, wait a minute, I know, I've got a student now. Like, I know particularly the types of jobs that she's interested in the future. And so if I have a guest speaker, or if there's a shadowing experience or something that comes up that's related to that, I'm always emailing it to her just so that she's in the loop. So you want to get to be involved, let them know you, develop relationships.
Yeah, I love how you phrase that, being a good departmental citizen, because I think that's really key. You want people who are willing to go to bat for the department, and like you said, faculty are often looking for students to give these opportunities to, right? That you always sort of say, well, how do you get these opportunities? Well, you show up and you put yourself out there and you say, how can I help? How can I be a good part of this department? And then people say, oh, okay, here's this opportunity for you. Yeah. Like, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I love that term too. I didn't make it up. I stole it from one of my colleagues years ago. But I just think that it's exactly, you do want to be part of that community. Like, even if they don't have a deep sense of community, you need to start developing some relationships so that at least you have a community. Because it makes a huge difference. Okay, then you want to continue to keep your grades up, of course, but talk to people and continue recording. So continue keeping a record of everything you're doing, because again, with those grad school applications, you're sitting there the fall of your senior year, I promise you're not going to remember that thing that you definitely think you could never forget right now. You'll forget it. So please continue to keep that record.
I will share that I was really bad about that. So I had that experience. You get to senior year and you're like, I don't feel like I've done anything. Like, I don't have any worthwhile thing to add to grad school. And then you start to reflect and you're like, oh no, I've done a lot of stuff.
I know. I just didn't,
better to keep track of it on the front end.
I know. I learned that. I got better about it in graduate school, but I was really bad about that. I could have done better as an undergraduate, probably could have set myself up better to maybe, I don't know, receive some certain type of scholarships or things. But, I was probably lazy about it. My dad always did it for me when I was in high school. Yeah. He had a folder of things. And so you need to now be the parent with the folder, but make it electronic and back it up and keep sending it to yourself multiple times so that you don't lose it.
Right.
Because it makes a difference. And you better believe other people are keeping a record. So you need to be keeping your record as well. If you know that you want to go straight into the workforce, now you want to increase your engagement with a few campus organizations. So now, hopefully you've been able to explore them, try and maybe step into a leadership role. It certainly doesn't need to be the head leadership role unless you really are attracted to the head leadership role and you really think that you can make a difference. But you might want to get involved on a specific committee or, run for a specific office. So get involved in those campus organizations. Again, still, it's better to have a few high impact experiences than a whole bunch of experiences where you're just running around from thing to thing and you can't really give all of your effort because you're spread too thin. So be careful that you do not overcommit. Also, if you think you can swing it, begin to obtain some off-campus experience. Now, some of my students and some of the students across the nation, they're always engaged in off-campus experience because they're having to work to put themselves through college. Great. Well, I don't know if it's great or not. Great depending on the circumstance. But if you can tailor that experience so that it's related to your field, this can be helpful. And sometimes there are experiences and you're not even really aware that they're directly related to what you want to do within that organization until you maybe look. Or I'll just give it a personal example. So I was working, one of my jobs in college was like at Barnes and Noble. So I love books. So I probably spent most of my paycheck. But anyway, working at Barnes and Noble as a bookseller. You think that's pretty straightforward. She sells books, helps people find books. That is what I mostly did. But I made a positive impression on the manager. And so after a few months, they had an opportunity for a community relations manager. Well, at that time, I was a journalism major as an undergraduate. That fit perfectly in with what I needed to do. That this other person quit, or I don't remember what happened, but they had an opening to fill. She asked if I would like to sort of split my work and fill that role. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And so sometimes even within your current job, you can find different ways to be engaged with some of your interests, or maybe you can find another job potentially that fits directly with your interests. I had a student of mine who she was very interested in working with children with special needs. Well, she put her way through college, basically working as a teacher's aide, for kids with special needs in the local school system. So sometimes there are creative ways if you have to work to try and align it with the future work that you want to do. You can also obtain this through volunteer experiences. So remember, all of your experience does not have to be paid. But volunteer experiences, shadowing opportunities. We've had some fabulous alumni who just recently, they set up a shadowing opportunity for some of our students here at the University of Houston. And this can be a good way to kind of have a day-long experience where you go and learn about a specific career opportunity, but then you can also put that on your resume, that you had that experience. I've had a student previously who she went and spent a week at a different organization. So that's a great way to even get an extended shadowing experience. But again, this is something that goes on your resume and demonstrates that you have prepared for what you are interested in doing, that you just didn't have this great idea in your head and you don't really know anything about the practical on the ground experience of engaging in that work. So sort of shadowing another profession, following another professional around during their day-to-day work.
Yeah, I did one of those when I was in college. I thought I was really interested in the human brain and curious about it, and thought, okay, would I want to go into psychology or psychiatry or maybe neurology? And so I actually shadowed a neurologist who was just in town, and I just reached out and said, could I do this? Would that be cool? And he was like, that's weird, but sure. And so, I had a few opportunities to go and see him meet with patients and see what that was like, which was really eye-opening and made me realize, like, yes, I think the brain is fascinating, but I don't really want to do these client meetings. Like, these seem really not, tailored to my gifts and my strengths. And so that actually helped me shift my perspective a little bit for the type of grad program I wanted to apply to. So it was really useful to go and have a little bit of that shadowing experience.
That's a great experience. And kudos for you for just calling that person, because I am the queen of the cold call. I believe, and usually people, they are flattered that somebody is interested in what they do. So they will usually meet with you. And so, yes, do it. I mean, I know my god sister, when we were growing up, she cold called a psychologist. We didn't know any. So actually we did know some, but she was interested in one who did a different type of, kind of therapy. Cold call them out of the yellow pages. Back then, we actually had the phone book. So now you can look on the internet and just call them out of the blue. Most people will say yes.
Yeah.
They might think it's a little weird, but they'll also be flattered because somebody cares about what they're doing. And you do. Community organizations are another way. So there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that they might have specific boards or committees that they're looking for people to serve on. This is a way for you to really get some leadership experience or programming experience or experience, in sort of communication, working with a group on a project. And, so if there is a nonprofit organization out there, explore that as well. Sometimes serving the community in that way, through a community organization is a really good way to get some great experience. Because I'm going to tell you, as somebody so some of the students look at me like I'm a little bit, crazy because I read these job announcements and sort of code them. It does not sound exciting to students at all. And I understand that. Well, one of the most common things that I'm seeing is that at the entry level, even at the entry level positions, even at those fresh out of college positions, they want experience. Sometimes they want a couple of years experience, which that can be frightening to students who are coming out of school, and they're like, well, when have I had time to get 2 years experience? Well, all of the experience does not have to be paid experience. So hopefully you've been able to volunteer or engage in some other way through an internship, certainly if your program requires an internship. And then too, if you are working a part-time job, you can try and, again, tailor that work and try and make it something that is related to what you think you might want to do, something that's somehow related to your major, because experience is huge. So that's why now my top 2 pieces of advice are talk to people, find out about what people do, or else you'll never know all these different jobs that are out there. And then 2, just do something to begin to get experience. It doesn't have to be exactly the thing you want to do later on, but just start getting some experience interacting in an organization or business, because that sells typically better than anything else.
The other thing I'll say about the experience piece, because I kind of dealt with this a lot when I was in graduate school and running research projects and that sort of thing, and you'd hire or you'd bring on undergrads to help you with things. We know that the tasks that we're assigning are kind of the boring ones sometimes, especially if you're just starting, like you're just getting your feet wet. And frankly, how you perform with the really boring stuff is so important, because it tells your supervisor, it tells the person you're working with, yeah, I know this is boring. I'm willing to do it anyway because I want to advance the good of the organization, or I want to do, good research, or I want to learn about the different processes. Like, I know sometimes I'm just literally going to be putting data in an Excel spreadsheet, but that has value. That is important. And so I will do good work, even though it's making me crazy with how boring it is. So making sure you're staying engaged, even in the really boring stuff, says a lot.
Oh, totally. I mean, because they want to see, it says something about work ethic. It says something about commitment and being conscientious and, not being lazy just because you don't care about it. But, if you're given a task, following through with it. And so definitely, I remember those days of sitting there with a sheet of paper.
Oh, yeah.
In the Excel cells or the SPSS cells. But, we got to do it. And we can't trust you with anything more important if you're not even going to do the basic stuff.
Right, exactly.
So that is a great point. Again, continue meeting with your advisor, be engaged in departmental events, continue recording all of the great things that you're doing, even if you're going the workforce track. Going into the junior year, okay, so if you think you're heading to graduate school, then we got to start preparing. Hopefully you've been, maybe if there's been a graduate school fair on campus, maybe you've walked through some before. So maybe you have an idea about some of the graduate programs that are out there. If you don't have an idea about what graduate programs are out there, now we need to get a crash course. So look for graduate school fairs that are going on at your particular university. You can, now that it's fall, you can start looking ahead for the spring to see if any will be scheduled. There might even be some left toward the end of this semester. We don't know. And you don't know until you look. Sometimes the career services will have it. Sometimes it'll be on the university main calendar. Ask people until you get a definite answer about whether or not there will be some sort of graduate school fair, so that you can come and see what types of graduate schools are out there. Also, I mean, the internet truly is your friend when it comes to searching for graduate programs. Just one tip I will give when searching for graduate programs: it's very different than the undergraduate search process. So it's going to be critical that you are finding a graduate program that's a good match for what you ultimately want to be doing, the field that you ultimately want to study. And you want to go more specific if you can. So there are a lot of psychology graduate programs out there. Some of them are, they have more faculty with expertise in things related to children. Some have more with expertise in issues related to the aging population. Seniors. Some are going to lean more cognitive. Some are going to lean more social. There's just a lot of variation. So you want to see what types of work they're doing. You want to see what types of classes you will be taking and look at it at that level of detail. This is not just, you just want to go to some list and sort of just look at some general ranking list of colleges like you might do as an undergraduate. You want to look specifically at the program level. This is even more important if you are applying to PhD programs. It's most PhD programs, they use a mentorship model, and which means that you're going to be paired with a faculty member, sometimes one faculty member, sometimes maybe a small group of faculty members. You will be directly engaged in their research highly for the next potentially 5 to 7 years. So you want to be sure they're doing something you're interested in. Otherwise, that won't be a very fun experience. So master's degree, it's also important. You maybe look a little bit more at the coursework. At PhD, you need to be looking at both. Okay, and then we want to start prepping for exams. So if there are any sorts of entrance exams that are required for the programs that you think you might be interested in, a lot of programs require the GRE. You need to start, yeah, I know. It is a different animal. I've been taking tests since I was a preschooler. Like we had
the worst.
Yeah, some sort of computer-based test when I was in preschool. So I was very comfortable with ACT, SAT. I didn't do much prep for it. You don't want to do that with the GRE, or the LSAT or the MCAT. You know, these tend to be different types of tests than maybe you're used to taking. And so you definitely want to give yourself time to prepare. So, and
the thing I will say about the GRE, as much as like I still, get a little anxious about it because it was a whole time of my life, but I will say that don't lose hope if your GRE scores aren't the highest that they could be, because all of the things that we've been talking about, the things you do along the way to prepare yourself for graduate school, that says a lot too. A lot of the GRE and a lot of these other tests are really just looking at baseline competence, and some people take tests well and some people don't. And so there are a lot of things that go into the consideration about graduate school acceptance. And so don't work yourself into a frenzy if your GRE score isn't as high as you would like it to be. You want to try to hit the baseline numbers that they're looking for the particular programs, if at all possible. But there are also ways to explain in your personal statements and other essays why your GRE score is lower, or why you think in spite of that you're still a really great candidate. So don't lose hope if your GRE score is really low.
Oh yeah, because they are. I know with me, I was just like, okay, this is not. Yeah, I'm used to having being in a very higher percentile or whatever. But so yes, don't lose hope. There are other things that go into your application. So I definitely want to underscore that point. Don't lose hope. But I also want to underscore the point, do the preparation that you can. Because there are some programs that get so many applicants, they can't reasonably review all of the materials for those. So they're looking for that bottom floor, that baseline, that sometimes they really will adhere to at least that baseline. Of course, you want to try and apply to more than one program as well. So try to apply to a range of programs as well in terms of competitiveness. But do take the preparation seriously. I do want to say, and the best way to do that is to give yourself time and have a good plan. If you know that you have tried to do test prep on your own before and you don't ever really take it seriously or follow through, then you might need to start to explore some classes and begin to make plans to enroll in maybe a GRE prep class. If you know that you're pretty committed and you can do the prep on your own, then that's fine. You need to explore some resources, some independent, there's some computer-based resources. There are some like old-fashioned books. There are practice tests that you can take. And so you do want to take the preparation seriously to get the highest score that you can possibly get. But then yes, once it's done, don't stress out about it. Don't freak out about it. Once it's done, just do the preparation that you can. Also, you want to continue obtaining research experience if most graduate programs are going to be looking for research experience. So continue to be involved in those labs. Maybe if you didn't, maybe if you didn't have the best experience in the first lab that you volunteered in, maybe you want to explore a different lab, or maybe even if you did have a good experience, you still want to get some, different type of experience in a different lab. So continue to be, to keep your eyes open. Sometimes programs will get new faculty members who they develop new labs on whole different topics that weren't there last year. So kind of, keep your ear to the ground, stay involved in that department so that you know what's going on, stay involved in your program and your professional organizations, and continue to be engaged. If there are any sort of undergraduate research experience funding programs, like sometimes I know at 2 universities that I've been at, there have been summer funding for undergraduates who are engaged in research, or sometimes there's funding through the fall or spring semesters. If they're working with a faculty member on a research project, explore those and approach faculty members if you think you might want to apply for one of those special programs, and see if you can find someone to mentor you through that process. Certainly, I've been at 2 universities now that have had, sometimes there's an honors sort of thesis. And so you want to start thinking about that as well if that happens to be you. Thinking about who maybe you could work on for that project, you work with for that project, what faculty members you could approach. Okay, continue to be an active, engaged departmental citizen. Continue developing deeper relationships with your faculty. If there's one you really connected with from freshman year, don't forget about them. Send them an email, drop by their office hours sometimes just to update them. And continue recording everything. For the workforce, continue to obtain on-campus and off-campus practical experience. And again, even if let's say your professional interests have shifted a little bit. Okay, so if you need to maybe shift some of those on-campus and off-campus experiences, maybe one professional organization was maybe related to your old major, so maybe you need to start explore some that are related to your new major or your new career path that you're exploring. Same with the off-campus experiences. Just kind of, do an assessment of, okay, what am I doing? How am I spending my time? What am I engaged in? If I have a leadership role, what does that look like? What does that say to a potential future employer? And so continue to engage in that self-reflection and reevaluate and make adjustments as you need to. If there's a leadership opportunity coming up and you haven't pursued one yet, you might want to definitely consider pursuing a leadership opportunity at this time, maybe running for a particular office or working on it, taking the leadership role in a special project. And begin to, if you haven't yet, you might want to attend a career fair. So attend a career fair on campus. A lot of campuses will host multiple career fairs. And they're just fun to walk through, to get an idea about what types of jobs are out there. Now, one tip that I heard recently from a career professional is, the big pet peeve sometimes is if you just walk up to an employer at a career fair and just say, "What do y'all do?" They like to see that you've done some preparation. So often, if a university is hosting a career fair, they will publish the companies who will be in attendance. And if there are a few that you're particularly interested in, you're like, "Hey, it sounds like they do cool things," go ahead and do your homework beforehand so that you can make conversation with them. One of the best ways to do your homework now really is social media. A lot of times people will keep their social media accounts updated more often than they will their web pages. And that also goes for companies and nonprofit organizations. If they just did something last month, chances are it's probably on their social media. They haven't updated their website yet. So check out and see if they have any social media. If they just recently did a really cool fundraiser, if they just recently hosted a big community event, or if they just recently posted an interesting job, so you have something to talk about. You can come up with a few questions to ask them and engage them and be that memorable person that stands out in a sea of people that's just like, "Oh, what do y'all do? What do y'all do?" So that's a good tip. I love that tip when I heard it. And also, be sure that you're now becoming more intimately involved with your career services in general. A lot of times they're going to host special workshops on things like getting your resume ready, what you want to do before you go to the career fair, by the way. You want to be sure your resume is in good shape. Sometimes they will have services where they do a resume critique. Sometimes they'll have things like professional etiquette nights where they teach you, if you're going out to lunch on an interview, they teach you the proper etiquette, or going out to dinner. Salary negotiation, very important, because that is an uncomfortable position to be in, but it's something that everybody has to go through probably at some point. And so start to really collect those professional development experiences, because your senior year is going to go back faster than you think. And you might have to have time to go to all of those workshops during your senior year. So start early.
I also want to underscore that there are lots of great resources online, and
Yeah.
I'll do a shameless self-plug and say that there are a couple of videos on this channel actually that talk about how to do a resume, or the do's and don'ts of a resume, things like doing an internship, what are the different perspectives on that, how to do interviews, those kinds of things. So you know, there's lots of great videos and other tutorials and things online too. So if you're one of those people like me who's kind of afraid of talking to people and would prefer to do some of that work online, there's a lot of great stuff out there. So just kind of keep your eyes open and do your work, and you know, dig through those resources as you're able.
Definitely. And even if you love talking to people, it's still good to get it's still good to get multiple perspectives. So it's still a good idea, you know, even if you've heard about resume building from the Career Services Office, it's still a good idea to look at some of the online resources, because maybe in your particular field, there might be a few different nuances there. Some career offices are large enough that they have people who specialize in different fields. We're lucky here at UH, we have, you know, specialty career counselors in every field, but a lot of places are not fortunate enough to have all those resources. So, and then too, it's always a good idea to get multiple sources. And these are things, on-demand internet resources that you can access from the comfort of your own home, even if it's midnight, you know, even on the weekend. And so that's super duper convenient. I love the one on internships, and I'll be posting the one on resumes for my students very soon. The one that you recorded. Yeah, I saw that the other day. I was like, oh man, okay, I gotta post that one for my students who are juniors and seniors. Okay, the senior year. All right, if you're planning to go to graduate school right away, you might have already applied by the time that I'm talking to you. And if so, yay, good job. I know it was a lot of work to get that application together. However, if you're applying for spring deadlines, begin working on your application materials well in advance. Maybe if you've already applied, maybe you don't even want to listen to like the next 2 minutes. I don't want you second guessing everything you've done. Just maybe pause, go get yourself a coffee for 2 minutes. I'm going to talk, you know, for people who are aiming for spring deadlines or December 1st deadlines. December 1st deadlines, January 1st, and other spring deadlines. First off, do not submit that personal statement without having a faculty member read over it. And now, first, before you take it to the faculty member, get a friend to read over to be sure it makes sense. You can get a family member to read over it just to be sure that it's coherent. But do not submit that without having a faculty member read over this. And you now start to see why these faculty members, these relationships with faculty members are so important. They are the people who see these personal statements. They're the people who sit on graduate admissions committees. They know what it's supposed to look like. A lot of people in the community, a lot of family and friends, they are not going to know what this personal statement is really supposed to look like. They don't know how it's supposed to be formatted. You know, sometimes, you know, I've seen just some that it's clear, you know, they really had a misunderstanding of what the document was even supposed to be, like what the mission of the document was supposed to be. So please get a faculty member. I remember as an undergraduate going to one of my communication studies professors and saying, look, and then he sort of gave me some pretty good guidance to change the direction of what I was talking about. Some of the main things that they're looking for in that personal statement, they want to look for preparedness, as Dr. Langworthy mentioned earlier. So they want to see, you're not just saying you want to be a psychologist, but you've had some sort of experiences that lead them to believe that you somewhat know what you're getting into. You can't know what you're getting into 100%, but you've made efforts to learn about the field. They want to also look for like your interest in terms of research, and they're trying to determine if it's going to be a good match for their specific program. It really is a match process, especially for PhD programs, because again, many good PhD programs are using a mentorship model. Not all of them, but many are. They use a mentorship model. And so they want to know that you have similarities in terms of research interests so that they can mentor you in that specific specialty area. But just get somebody to read that. Same with your resume, your CV, if they're requiring that, get a faculty member to look over these, take it to career services, get people to read over this, people who are familiar with what graduate admissions committees are looking for, because it can be quite a bit different than like even applying for a job. You want to give yourself, the personal statement is not something that you really should be writing a few days before or even a week before. You really want to be able to give yourself some time to revise it as needed, to give other people an opportunity to really thoughtfully read it and consider it and give you feedback. And I mean, I'm going to say, I would definitely start working on it a couple of months before the deadline. What would you say, Dr. Langner?
Oh yeah, for sure. The personal statement for me was the hardest thing, because you have to be able to tell your story in a way that's compelling and convincing people that you should be a graduate student when you're like, I don't know if I should be a graduate student. Am I qualified? I don't know. Like, so there's a lot of reflection that goes into that, a lot of figuring out how to tell your life story in 2.5 pages or whatever it is, you know. So and make it coherent and make it something that's compelling, that people are going to be interested in, and that faculty are going to see and say, oh yeah, no, they're going to be a great fit for this program. So give yourself lots of time. It's excruciating and agonizing at times, but it's definitely worth it to give yourself the time to put your best foot forward, because that's really what you're trying to do.
Right. And another thing, I mean, I almost hate to say this, but I mean, it's just like applying for a job. I hope you're not sending the same cover letter out to every job. If so, and it's working for you, then you just rock and you're amazing. But a lot of times that's not going to work. Yeah. You know, you're going to tailor that. And the same with the personal statement. But the only way you can tailor it is if you've given yourself plenty of time to really, truly research this program. If you, I mean, sometimes you read things and it's like, do they know where they're applying? You know, the name of the program isn't even listed properly, you know. So like, be sure that you know what program you're applying to specifically. Email them and ask questions. Email, you know, the graduate admissions officer, ask questions about the program if you've got some things that are unclear. Maybe you can't determine it from the website. And if you need to go in and meet with somebody, usually there's a faculty member who's happy to meet with the prospective students. But you've got to do your homework about the program. If you want to communicate that you're prepared for the program, you need to know what their program is so you can get a sense of what they're looking for. And that, you know, the only way to do all of this is to give yourself time. And I know that it's difficult when you've got classes that you're also still doing work for, but that's why it's so important to start early. Preferably, you want to be working on some of this stuff during the summer of your senior year. And hopefully you've gotten an idea about what programs you're interested in during your junior year. But even if you're playing catch up, give yourself time to do so. Give your references plenty of time to...
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because been there.
Oh my gosh, some of the worst moments of my life is when I'm thinking, yeah, I'll write your reference, and then I neglected to ask when it was due.
Yeah.
Like, well, here it is, Dr. Jordan. It's due tomorrow. What?
No, don't do that. Don't ever do that to somebody.
That letter might not be as great as the letter I could have written if I would have had a couple of months notice. That's A. So it's, you know, there's a bar, there's a ceiling for as far as I can go in terms of the quality of what I can write in that amount of time. But and I don't have any time to like follow back up and ask with you, okay, now what is the specific program you're applying to? So now I'm being generic, you know, when I'm writing. And so you want to give them plenty of time to ask all the questions, do the homework that they need to do. I mean, certainly at a minimum in a crunch, I guess 2 weeks, but that's not really good enough. Usually, I mean, you need to give them at least a month, and 2 months is better, you know, then, and it's very helpful. I can still see the faces of the lovely students who have done this for me. I can see their faces. They're off in grad school now. These lovely students who have given me a spreadsheet or some sort of table where they have the names of all of the schools. They have the names of the program, because if I just know you're applying to University of Houston, but it's a few days before the deadline and I don't know what program, now I've got to be very generic in in my what I can say, because I don't want to accidentally write to the wrong program and, you know, sort of let them know that you didn't even give me the program name. So they've given me the universities, they've given me the names of the program. Tell me, sometimes I have students that are applying to both master's and PhD programs. Put that in the table, the spreadsheet as well. Because I can say, oh, she'd be an excellent candidate for your doctoral program in one and an excellent candidate for your master's program in the other. They need to know this. They need to know the address for the admissions office, wherever the admissions office is for that university or for that specific program. It depends on the school. So you just have to figure out. You have to do your homework, because I definitely have colleagues. I have some colleagues who they are still old school and they are still going to write that letter in a formal business letter way, and they want that address to put in that appropriate area, because that communicates formality. So you want to give them that information if you need it. And then, very important, that last column needs to be all of the deadlines. The deadlines need to be in chronological order so that they can go down that list. And I know if I've only got time to write like 3 letters today, and you're applying to sort of a variety of programs and I need to tailor it a little bit, that's fine. I'm going to start with the 3 that are due first, and then I'm going to move on to the others that are due later. So please, they will love you if you are organized. Get all the materials together. You don't want to be sending them, you know, one week you're sending them a request from one school, then another week you're sending them 2 more requests via email, and then they're getting random links. You have to send the links. Those are often automated by the university. That's fine to send at different times as you get different applications finished. But it's helpful if at the beginning you just say, look, this is all of the schools that I plan to apply for. Here they are. That I plan to apply to, excuse me. Here they are in one sheet. So I know that I can save that sheet and I have it. I know exactly Jane is applying to these schools. I need to be sure I've checked each one of these off and I don't miss one. I've harped on that a long time, but that's very important.
It's so important. It's so important. It's so important.
It is very important. And I'm not mincing words when I say 2 months is great. You know, a month is good.
Right.
So give them as much time as you can.
Because if nothing else, I mean, there are 2 parts to this. The first is that you are asking them to speak about you positively to your potential future graduate program, right? And people don't generally write positively when they're asked to do it at the last possible second. And
they really love you.
Exactly. And secondly, like, they're representing you to your future program, and so you want to make sure that you've respected them enough to give them the time that they need to write you a respectful letter. So making sure that you give your references enough time and enough heads up and enough information about all of the programs that you're applying to is so important.
It's so important.
So important.
It's so important. And I mean, and like a point of pride for me, like once a university like told a student like, oh yeah, like this was a very, you know, you had very strong letters. And like the student came back and told me like that they had mentioned the letter. Well, there were a couple things to that. First of all, this student was a very engaged departmental citizen and she had done her preparation. But another thing is she gave me the thing. You gave me enough notice, so I could actually write a very thorough letter, and I could include all of these fabulous things that I wanted to include. And so, yeah, it's kind of, that's the end. You finish strong by giving them as much notice as you can. And sometimes you find out about some program at the last minute, and they'll understand that if you've done your homework on the front end with the initial ones. You know, we understand that sometimes there's exceptions. If you are delaying going to graduate school, do still go ahead, continue to maintain those relationships because you'll still need them later on. For graduate schools, they typically want 3 to 5 letters of recommendation. Most are 3. Some of them are 5, which that's kind of a lot, but some of them are 5. They want to see at least 1 or 2 of those. They want them coming from faculty members because faculty members tend to speak to the qualities that they're looking for. Other sort of supervisors and people in the community can be a great way to bolster an application, particularly for very applied programs where you're going to be working in the field a lot. I mean, they can really speak to your engagement in the community, but I would definitely work hard to have at least one strong letter from a faculty member that you know well, and hopefully you can have at least two of those letters be from faculty members. But so you're going to still maintain those relationships, even if you think you're delaying going to graduate school. Continue to go ahead and continue to prep for the GRE or whatever associated exam, because sometimes sometimes it could be nicer to take that when you're still in that school study mode. So you have to make the best choice for you, but at least don't let it fall off of your radar that that's something that you need to do in the future. If you are invited for an interview, so if you are a senior who particularly have applied for a PhD program, although a lot of master's programs do interviews too, when you go to that interview in the spring, you just remember that everything you do, every part of that interview is on display. Okay, even when you have the meeting with the students, that's one of the best ways. Better believe that they are going straight back to that faculty member who sent them there to that meeting, to send them there to host you, or you're staying at their house, and you better believe that they're going to talk to that faculty member about, your behavior, your demeanor, whether or not they think you would be a good colleague for their lab, whether or not you seem really interested in the program, whether you seem kind of apathetic and like you're just there for a trip, they're paying attention. Mm-hmm. Everyone is watching you, and they're looking for fit, because if this is a PhD program, this is a 5 to 7 year commitment, and a lot of them have money at stake. So a lot of PhD programs, they fund you. They don't accept you unless they're funding you. They're providing money for your tuition and often expecting you to work, and they're going to give you more money in the form of a stipend. So this is a huge investment for a university. And so just know, be aware that you want to have your professional behavior on display. Be a person, be yourself, but be the professional version of yourself.
And that's also a great opportunity for you to get information about whether you think it's the right fit for you too. And I think we talked about this on our last hangout. So I'll again reference that one is in the link to that is in the description. But when you're doing these grad school interviews, it's not only for them checking you out, it's also for you to have an opportunity to say, would I be happy here? Is this a good fit for me? And so they can be really, really interesting trips and weekends or whatever, a couple of days where you get to really get a sense for what would life be like here? Could I stand living here for 5 to 7 years and working here for 5 to 7 years? Because that's what most PhD programs take these days. So, going into that and preparing for that, both in terms of being professional, I think that's a great suggestion to make sure that you're on top form, but also to make sure that you're doing some questioning and really wondering and reflecting on whether this is a great fit for you too.
Definitely. I'm so glad you brought up that point. I mean, I've known students who've gone on these interviews, and actually the universities needed to be watching the YouTube video because they did not put their best foot forward, or the other students in their particular lab, perhaps. I mean, if you, for instance, see that there's a lot of infighting within the lab, but then there seems to be a lot of competitiveness, there's something off about these relationships. Everybody's got their door closed, people don't seem to be speaking to each other. I don't know. So you want to just be on the lookout. I mean, maybe everybody has their door closed because they're in a meeting, but I'm just saying, I'm giving that as a potential example to say, be aware of the environment. And I think that's a great point that you brought up, because that would be the environment that you're going to be immersed in for the next several years. So be aware of the dynamics. And it's particularly helpful if you're going on more than one, because then you can kind of compare. Sometimes it's difficult to ascertain if you're only going on one particular visit because you don't have as much to compare it to. But it's similar to a job. You kind of want to get a sense of what workplace life is in that is in that particular organization or office. Mm-hmm. And so that's a great piece of advice. Also, when you're going on the interview, do your homework. This actually relates to that piece of advice. So be sure that you've done your homework ahead of time. Like, be sure that you do know the basics about the program and you have your questions ready. so that, if there are things that you're kind of on the fence about in terms of the program, you don't have to say I'm on the fence about this, but you ask your questions to clarify things that you might be unsure about. So be sure that you have a list of your questions ready to roll so that when you meet with the appropriate people, be it faculty members or other graduate students, you can ask them and try to get some of your questions answered. Because it's a major commitment. And often you're moving. So you definitely want to be as sure as you can be anyway. With the workforce, give yourself ample time to work and rework your resume. It's helpful if you're regularly going to these career fairs, because then every time you can kind of look at your resume again with fresh eyes for a new time. So continue to do that. Continue to take it to career services. Do not be fooled because it's only one page and think, oh, there's one page, I can just throw that together. It's just one page. I can write one page quickly. Nope. We need to try and whittle down your experiences and summarize them. And so a lot of times that takes a high level of skill, because you're trying to figure out how you can combine experiences and summarize them in a way to where the maximum amount of your experiences that are relevant to a specific job are represented on that one page. And so that really can take a lot of reworking. And it's one of the biggest mistakes I see is people just start cutting things out of their resume. They just cut things out or just try and add things in, but never actually revising the language so that they can capture more in fewer bullet points or sentences or things like that. And so give yourself time to do that, because it takes time. Do not submit your resume without allowing a few people to read it and give you feedback. And it could be feedback like, oh, what did you mean here? Or, oh, what does this acronym mean? And so you take that seriously, because even if you know what that acronym means, other people might not. And these are the types of people who are going to be reading your resume. So let people give you feedback. Also, continue attending those workshops. Become your career services best friend, because they're going to know, and particularly if you want to stay in that area, but even if you want to move outside of the area, they're going to have that network of potential jobs, potential alumni in the area who might be hiring particular internships. Certainly, there are many programs that require an internship. I know we require an internship from the program in which I teach. If your program doesn't require an internship, you might consider doing one anyway, finding your own internship. And sometimes you can take it for class credit, and sometimes you just have to sort of do it as a volunteer on your own, but that can look really good. And a lot of times if you do well at an internship, it can turn into a job at that organization, or they might know somebody and think, oh, you did really well. I can't hire you, but let me see. I've got somebody across town who they're doing something similar. So continue getting that experience, and hopefully you've been able to build some experiences now so you can tell your professional story in the best way. Network, network, network. Don't be embarrassed to tell people that you are on the job market. That's the best way to find leads, is to network. And of course, many jobs you do apply for online, but a lot of times it's helpful if they have a personal connection with somebody. Maybe you personally reached out to inquire about different opportunities because you're just interested in the work that the organization or business is doing. So sometimes that personal connection can really be helpful. You want to network. You want to let everybody know what you're interested in doing, what field you're interested in working with. Even if you're not 100% sure, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life, if you at least know, for instance, I am very interested in working with adolescents right now. Let people know that, because then they've got that in their mind. That's something that they can connect with and be on the lookout for opportunities.
Yeah, the thing about networking, that it's still hard. It's like, I've been in the professional world for so long, and it's still just so hard. But the thing I would encourage people to think about, the word networking often feels really icky, because it feels like the cocktail party where you have to go up and shake hands and be like, so what do you do? Oh, what do you do? It's like, it just feels really scary that way. But there are other ways. Right. Exactly. But there are other ways to do networking that can be a little, again, less anxiety producing for people like me, the introverts of the world. And so reaching out online. it doesn't have to be somebody local. You can find people on Twitter or on LinkedIn or wherever who you think they're doing cool stuff, and reach out to them and say, hey, could we do an informational interview? Could I ask you some questions about what you do? Just building relationships. That's really what we're talking about when we're talking about networking. It's not the like sleazy, handshake, here, take my business card kind of stuff that can feel really icky sometimes. It's more about, I'm really interested in you and the work that you're doing, and I want to help you do that work better. So can I help you do that work better? And building those relationships around common interests and things that you're excited about and that the employer might be excited about. So finding those people that you can have those conversations with, excuse me, and build those relationships with is really key when you're thinking about networking and what that looks like for you.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about that, building the relationships, again, it helps to have information. Like if you know that you're going to some career fair
Right.
or that you're going to call an organization, it helps if you've done your homework ahead of time, because then you can say, yeah, you're doing this really cool thing. I'm very interested in X, Y, Z. And of course, you'll say more professionally than that, but but you can be yourself as well. Have your own personal tone in it as well. And if it's somebody who you just meet randomly. One of my students and I, we were laughing yesterday. Because at her work, she interacts with a lot of different people, and my students have to do an informational interview in one of my classes. And, she just struck up a conversation with this person, asked what they did. Turns out it was something that she's interested in, asked, hey, would you mind if I interviewed you? And so it could be just being inquisitive, like being genuinely curious about the world around you and what people are doing. So even if it's not a situation where you've been able to do a ton of homework on the front end, just being genuinely curious in that moment and learning about people and asking people to tell, oh, really? How did you get into that? And genuinely asking questions. That's the best way to build a relationship. And usually people are more than happy to talk about themselves because they don't have to do much prep to do that. It's easy. Exactly. They know themselves well enough anyway. And that's actually next on my list. Have genuine conversations with people, genuine connections to try and build those relationships. Also, sometimes it can be helpful, particularly if your university doesn't have a lot of resources when it comes to professional development. Of course, we've got the resources you can find online, but in the spirit of trying to connect with people in your area, there might be Chamber of Commerce, the community colleges, libraries, community centers that sometimes will offer things too. And sometimes the people facilitating those are the people who are in those sessions, like special workshops and things. They might, they're part of the community, so they might know people. So just, again, even if it's somebody who you don't really think might ever have a connection to what you're interested in doing, once you start talking to people and getting to know them and telling them about what you're interested in, they might think, oh, wait a minute, my relative does X, Y, Z, you just never know. So don't ever think, oh, this person's not an important connection. No, everybody is worth building a relationship with, because people are people. There's a very humanist side too, but also because you just never know. I mean, we're all connected to different people in different fields. So and my final point is to use multiple strategies to search for a job. So we've sort of been touching on that, but you want to definitely use your word of mouth. Use your relationships that you already have, family members, friends, people, the professional relationship that you built. If you've done these informational interviews that Dr. Langworthy's been talking about, hey, I know I met with you 6 months ago. It was so interesting learning about your work. I'm about to graduate. I'm on the job market. I just wanted to touch base if there's any opportunities in your organization, or if you know about any opportunities, would you mind sending them my way? Attached is my resume, and it will have been proofread several times, right? So word of mouth. Reaching out to your contacts who you've hopefully built genuine relationships with. So using the internet, internet's still a good resource. Sometimes it gets knocked. I found a lot of jobs on the internet. I found a lot of jobs in person, but I've also found a lot of jobs on the internet. So do still use that as a tool. I have sometimes searched child let's say Pensacola, Florida, wherever I'm living, youth, Memphis, Tennessee, to just see what sorts of organizations and businesses do work with kids. But I was very engaged in that field. And so sometimes it's as simple as doing a Google search in your area so that you can see what opportunities and organizations are out there, and then actually researching the organization's page, going to the About Us section, contacting people, asking them. Sometimes their website's not up to date, but at least you can get their contact information, and then you can research. You can reach out to them. You can go into the Career Center, career fairs, and again, even directly cold calling businesses and organizations. I'm the queen of the cold call. You know, I'll cold call you to ask you to come speak in my class.
I think you're my hero. Like, that just seems awful to me. I so glad that you can do that, though.
Or the cold email, that's less threatening.
That's true. That's much easier.
I don't like talking on the phone that much. So actually, in all honesty, I'm usually emailing them. It'll be a very nice, genuine email where I'm communicating, hey, I think this is really cool what you're doing. Would you mind helping me? Or is your organization, do you have any volunteer opportunities, work opportunities? You know, here's our resume, something like that. So actually, the email is actually less threatening. So that's the way to get out of the cold call. Cold email them.
Yes.
In addition to making those one-on-one relationships. So I feel like I have a mouthful. I've said a mouthful. I can talk about it all day and all night. I'm going to stop there with my prepared points. And if there are any questions, if you have anything that you want me to clarify, Dr. Langworthy, just let me know.
I don't have anything specific. Thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom with us today. I want to encourage a couple of different things for anybody watching. We've had a few viewers on and off throughout the stream, but for anybody who's watching this after the fact, if you have questions that you want answered, or if we said something and you're like, what does that mean? Say more about that. Leave them below in comments. Otherwise, you can reach out to both Dr. Jordan and I on Twitter. So I am at Dr. Langworthy, and Dr. Jordan is at Dr. Erica Jordan, correct? On Twitter, yes. Okay. So you can reach out to us there and ask us questions. We're always looking for ways to help students kind of reach their full potential and figure out where they're going next and get there and answer those kinds of questions, because I don't know about you, but I remember going through this whole process, and it was really hard, and I really relied on the people who had been through it before and the people who were willing to say, okay, this is what it's like, and here's how you get through it. And so we want to be those people for you. So if you have questions or things that you want clarified, please reach out or ask questions in comments below. What else was I gonna say? Oh, for informational interviews, if you are interested in that topic, I am hoping to release a video on this channel in a couple of weeks about that topic of what is an informational interview and how do you ask about one and how do you get one and what does that look like. So stay tuned for that. You can hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon if you want to get notifications whenever I upload anything on this channel. And then also I want to put in a push for Dr. Jordan's blog, which is, again, HDFS, right? Okay, HDFS, which stands for Human Development and Family Sciences?
Well, for us, it stands for Human Development and Family Studies. Sometimes it does stand for science. Yep, HDFS Careers.
Careers.com. And she's got a great blog over there with, again, a lot of great suggestions for people who are looking at careers in the human development field, but also more generally for students who are looking at taking the next step in your career, wherever that may take you. So again, thank you, Dr. Jordan, for joining me today. This was great. Lots of great stuff here. And I hope viewers, you found it enjoyable and interesting as well. With that, I think we'll sign off unless there's anything else you wanted to say.
Only thing I'll say is I am very much looking forward to that informational interview, because now there will be somebody else besides me telling the students. Wait for that to come out, and because I think it helps. It can be such a scary thing to do, but it is one of your best tools, really, for graduate school or career. This is one of your best resources and tools to prepare, be sure you're on the right track, be sure you actually want to go that direction, and then to begin building relationships in the field. It's just, it's so invaluable. So I look forward to that with bated breath.
Yeah, it's a skill I continue to use and will continue to use for the rest of my career. So I think it's one of those that doesn't get talked about enough. So informational interviews, do them. They're good.
Yay!
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Dr. Jordan, for joining me today. And thanks to everybody for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Dr. Langworthy.
Bye.
Good to see you again. Bye.